fifth generation. And what happened here? Okay, we still did. Okay, I happened in that period of time. 5 kids were born. Charlene and I have 3, of which you're seeing our middle son here very shortly. And my twin brother Brad has 2 children. And on top of that, the 6th generation was born. When I talk about generation, I'm talking about generations living here in Lodi. My grandfather was born here in Lodi in 1882. So we have been stuck in Lodi for a very long time. The first wine that we have is Alejandro. Just about 1 minute. I'm giving you a cue, Aaron. I'm going to turn Aaron loose because he's standing in the Alejandro Rosé vineyard. Just one thing, what he's standing is a transformation of some habitat area that used to be vineyard and is no longer vineyard. So what we have done is done something a little bit more than we folks are doing. We've taken a grand area, taken the vineyard out, reclaimed it into natural habitat, and what that is doing, it's bringing back the quails that we've been missing for a long time. We're starting to see quail, we're seeing lynx, we're seeing mountain lion, we're seeing deer, bobcats. So a lot of habitat restoration has been going on in LangeTwins. So rosé, nice fresh wine. Fresh wine.
I'm not sure that he buzzed. Is he blanking out for you, Allison? Okay, can you hear me all right? Okay, so Randy, you must have a technical issue. I'll kind of take over from here. So what he was saying is that the Alejandro Rosé is a nice fresh wine, perfect for that warm summer evening to enjoy. So it's not quite 100% dry, but it's a beautiful little wine that comes from this vineyard that is actually right in front of me. So this is the Alejandro Rosé vineyard. So this is the Alejandro varietal, which is unique to this region. There's only a few, maybe 50 to 100 acres of Alejandro planted in the entire state of California. So this is really quite a treat. And Allison, you can still hear me okay, correct? I think so, great. Entering this phase of the wine grape growing season called veraison. And if there's any smart folks out there who know what veraison is, that's when the berries start turning color, where they start softening and getting a little more sugar, averting those acid indicators, having that pH go down or go up, the acids go down, and the sugars go up, which means the signaling of the start of the ripening of these berries. So these clusters are just now starting to enter that veraison period here in the next couple of weeks. We had a little bit of sunburn from those really hot days that we had about a week ago, but all in all, the canopy here in the Alejandro vineyard is looking just spectacular, really nice. So we're very happy. Vineyards are unique amongst other folks in California. We're not certainly the only people doing this, but there are others who, like us, who are trying to enhance the areas around our vineyards. So we don't see like my dad's father, very, how do you insulting this German culture, a very square-headed German attitude of, whatever's in that vineyard should only be vines and nothing else. So every single weed, every single bug, every single mouse and critter was eliminated, or at least sought to eliminate, because that was the way things were done in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, and beyond. But now we recognize that viticulture absolutely does not have to be a single system where it's a monoculture. We can be a larger participant of the greater ecosystem, and we really have Randy, my father, and Brad to thank for changing that attitude of how we farm, and that we can bring our farm edges alive and really support the native ecosystem in which these vineyards participate, because they do work hand in hand very beautifully if you just expand your mind a little bit and include them in your work here on the farm. And so one thing that we can see here, and by the way, where did that come from? I think it comes from an appreciation of of nature that my dad and my mom and family brought to us by, encouraging us to be in the outdoors, to appreciate backpacking and hiking and understanding how our watershed works, appreciate the land. And I think that's something that we can talk about more in the future, about something that this current generation is missing, is that we're not really teaching our students and our kids the relationship that we humans should have with the land and how critical of a participant that is to our sustainability as a species. And so
Definitely. Hey, Aaron, can I jump in really quickly? We wanted to invite everyone to open up their first wine and maybe even start tasting as you talk about the amazing history of. Yeah.
Great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Open up the Alianico Rosé. It's got beautiful colors. So check it out, have a sip, and I'm going to treat you to a nice site of this habitat restoration project that we did in the early 2000s. And we worked with the Environmental Defense Fund, and we worked with our local and state agencies in order to remove a 30-acre vineyard, or a little less, 20-acre vineyard that my grandfather planted and his dad planted. And it really wasn't ideal for wine grapes in the first place. It was a little too close to the Mokelumne River. I mean, if I had a better baseball arm, I could throw a baseball into the Mokelumne from where I stand. And so this little area, which we call the Sand Point, was a vineyard. And now we have we worked with native plant nurseries to reestablish this habitat area as an extension of the natural riparian zone that is the Mokelumne. And if any of you guys are from the Bay Area, I'm sure, so you probably know that the water source for the East Bay, right, comes from the Mokelumne River. And so the East Bay Municipal District, which provides water for Oakland, actually comes from the river that passes by my childhood home. And so
wow, I did know that, but I didn't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, we lovingly call it the Mokelumne. But yeah, it's a Native American word from the Miwok tribe, actually. So this is one of our habitat restoration projects that we started in the early 2000s. We took out a vineyard, and we're really doing is trying to reestablish these buffers that weren't between a agricultural area and a native riparian area that was really not well respected during the mid centuries, 1900s through 1975. When apple habitats, when it's allowed to graze the water's edge, we start eliminating those trees which shade the water, which cool it for the salmonoids and other creatures. And so it's really about understanding the whole ecosystem. And so we thought it would be a great way to try to reestablish these riparian zones which were damaged and bring them back to full life. And we really have seen such an incredible increase in species. Part of our, we actually won the Aldo Leopold Award for Sustainable Conservation back in 2000 and I'm not sure, 11, I think it was. And we used that money to continue the funding for an organization called the Point Reyes Bird Observatory, which I'm sure you're familiar with. They actually were out here for almost a decade doing bird counts, doing bird surveys before and after the restoration project to see what is a measurable increase of species. And did we actually make a difference with this project? And the answer is absolutely, we did. So we saw a huge increase in the native birds, the western bluebirds, the sharp-shinned hawks, and the multiple species of buteo, which are here. And it was just an amazing journey for us to see this project come to life. And now we have oak trees and cottonwoods that stand 25 feet tall. We have in many other parts of the ranch. It's not just about the wines we grow in the grapes.
Having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, Aaron.
Okay, I went down this habitat area, but I'll stand back up on the levee. And I just have about one more minute here. Back to the top. So anyway, just a beautiful project that we've done. One of our Our first habitat project was back in the late 80s, early 90s. That is really looks twice as big as this on the Gill Creek area. And so our whole idea here is in our little pocket of the Mokelumne River, we're really trying to re-engage the habitat area here to provide really healthy corridors for not only vertebrates for invertebrates. And I tell you, I went to school for viticulture and learned how to farm from my dad and learned how to respect nature. But working with folks like you, experts like WildCare, experts like our local resource conservation district, experts like environmental defense and other folks who use incentives, right, and are open about working with farmers to do our best, has really been an education for me. And so I turned from a farmer into really kind of a conservationalist. And so it's really top of mind whenever we do a new vineyard project or are changing or making a change. We're always thinking about what can we do? Can we provide a 10-foot hedgerow here just to help those corridors, which were completely demolished, with modern agriculture in the 1900s. So we really need to reestablish those, and that's what we're really focused on, is bringing those corridors back because they're so critical to the invertebrate habitat. So that's one of our goals, and we're lucky enough that we get that benefit for our Aglianico Rosé, which is right through here. You can see the vineyard just beyond the oak trees here. And I have to think that the flavor tastes a little bit better in this wine because it's so close to a great project and right in the crook here of the McCollum River. So that's a little bit about this project. One thing that I need to mention is that we also included a species of shrub, Sambucus mexicana, which is the which is the Mexican elderberry, which is actually the host plant for the native valley longhorned elderberry beetle, and that guy is on the endangered species list. And so we were actually created the first of its kind safe harbor agreement with the Endangered Species Act in order to plant those host plants without in danger of having the big federal government coming down on us. We were able to include that in the habitat restoration project, which was a huge coup for farmers. The farmers are, and this will be my last point before getting back to the wine with Randy and Shar, but we got to remember that farmers are the largest private landowners or the largest landowners in California are the private landowners, right? So it's really great that we have agencies which are willing to engage with those landowners and talk about what we can do to improve and enhance our native spaces, that are in a complementary way with our farming operations. And that's what we really try to do, because that's what we have to do at the end of the day. So Shar and Randy, I'll swing it back to you to talk about the wine.
Great. Yeah, too bad, Aaron, you don't have any wine in your hands. Sorry. We want to just let everybody know that there's a couple elements tonight in addition to all the wines, and that is the chance to do a little trivia game, and it's in your packet that you have. So pay attention to all the little details that might be offered tonight. Get on our website and then take a picture of that answers and send it in to me, and I'm the girl that sends all the prizes out, so that's important. The other thing is we've got some great recipe pairings on the backside of your little program. They're just all local chefs that have put those together. They're great pairings. Please try them, take a picture of them, send them in to me so I can see that actually someone other than me is making them. So Randy's going to get into the second wine, and off you go.
Absolutely, and I want to just reiterate that we have a very enthusiastic sixth generation or fifth generation working, developing more habitat areas and restorations of what used to be vineyards into habitat areas. It's a really great thing. When he said that there were a lot of species that have come back, it's a good thing when you wake up in the morning and look out on the lawn and you got a covey of quail on your lawn, and that's just between the hawks and the quail, the pheasant, it's all coming back.
Well, how about our bobcat that was in our backyard?
Exactly. So it's all coming back. It makes my dad sound bad and my grandfather, but in the day, when they bought property, they would clear from property line to property line, and they planted it. And there were places that probably shouldn't have been planted. And so we're trying to make up for that by reclaiming really vineyards and putting them back into native habitat, and we're seeing tremendous results. And I will go on to the next wine. The last thing, it's really a lot of fun when we take a walk out there in the Sandpoint area and some of the other reclamations. We have 4 of them going on right now. When you see oak trees that we planted 30 years ago, before anybody even had coined the word sustainable or habitat restorations. We planted these trees with acorns, and now I can't put my arms around the trunks. And the trees are 25, 30, 40 feet tall. And that's leaving a real legacy.
Well, Aaron's little boy, who's 6th generation, has just put together 35 oak trees that are now ready to be planted. So he spent the last year and a half nurturing these little acorns into trees, and we're finding locations for those trees to be planted.
So with that, you know, we farm in 2 different regions. We farm in the Lodi appellation, or the AVA, and then we go a little northwest of Lodi, of the Lodi AVA, and we go into Clarksburg. And there is a separate AVA up there that we've gone up there to plant certain varieties, one of them being Chardonnay. And so what you have is, for your next wine, is a Chardonnay from the vineyard called Merrill. And when you see the actual bottle of these, the same thing with the Alejandro, you will see that there is a title on that. See it there? I hope you can see that. And that is the name of the vineyard itself. And that is the dominant feature of the label, is that it's Merrill and the Merrill Vineyards. It's the name of the vineyard. And so we have, what you have in front of you is a Chardonnay that's single vineyard. So 100% of it comes from that vineyard itself. And so this wine is really a pretty nice wine. Yes, the Chardonnay, I'm putting it in front of me. It's nice, ripe fruit, tropical fruit, in fact. It gets oak aging involved with this wine as well. But one thing that occurs to the wine that a lot of people don't do because it takes time, and that is surly aging. And surly aging is after the fermentation is completed, it's still in a stainless steel tank, because all our wines are stainless steel fermented first before it goes into the barrels. And so surly aging means that once the fermentation process is completed, and when that, we know that when the yeast have no more sugar from the juice to consume, and they die, and they go to the bottom of the tank. That's lees. Surly means on the lees, or on the yeast. And then what we do is we slowly stir the wine in that tank up to 10 to 12 months, and we stir it. And what you accomplish with surly aging is taste the wine again. And when you swallow it, in the back of your palate, you're going to feel, at least I do, I feel a creaminess to the wine. And that is surly aging. And it takes time. It's a very old French way of making wines, old world way. But we find that some of those ways are very, very popular and makes a unique wine. And that's what this one is all about. So surly aged Chardonnay from the Merrill Vineyards, based in Clarksburg.
And when you get a chance to graduate out of those little tiny taster bottles, and you actually go to the store, to the winery to get some big bottles, on the side of the label, there is a look, and it's a composition of the soil structure of that particular vineyard. So all our single vineyard wines have that unique soil structure on there. So that's on the label. It's kind of a fun little game when you're enjoying the wines.
So I'll say one other thing, and then we'll move on to the next wine. I hope we're not going too fast or too slow.
We have a special guest here coming up.
Oh, I don't see that. Okay. Okay, so let me say one thing about all the wines that you have tonight, and all LangeTwins wines, no matter whether they're Sandpoint wines or single vineyard wines, they're all sustainably grown and certified by Protected Harvest, which is based in Santa Cruz, California. It's really, they audit our vineyards and they audit our records, and you have certain criteria to meet, and it covers from A to Z of farming. I mean, really, from what type of cover crop you plant, how much water you use, and really right down to what do you pay the people you work with, and the care for you have for those people as well. And so you
Randy, what
Yes.
was that certification called again?
It's by Protected Harvest, but it's called Lodi Rules.
Okay, I've never heard of that. That's really interesting. And how does that differ from organic, or is it the same thing?
Well, it's sustainable farming, and that's an easy question to answer because really organic growing they're concerned with one thing, and that is how you protect your crop, and you cannot use anything synthetic. And so that's what they're judged on, and that's what they're audited to. Sustainable growing under protected harvest, you have to do, you're audited on a whole lot more things that go into the vineyard. Now, we cannot claim to be organic because we do use certain compounds to protect our grapes. So it's not anywhere close to being called organic, but I think it's so much more broader that we have
Oh, yeah.
a bigger impact on the vineyards that we have. Those are the two differences, but the common theme between organic growers and sustainable growers is, quite frankly, these people think about what they're doing, what their impact is. We're both doing that, a sustainable grower and an organic grower. They're thinking. And that doesn't mean that even though the organic grower is being judged on a small area of viticulture, that doesn't mean they're not thinking about the other things that go into viticulture as well. So it's a good process. We're not there, and I'm not saying that we're ever going to be there, but it is, both are very important. One last thing on the sustainable, then I promise you I'll get on to the next wine, is, a lot of people use the word sustainable for a long time. We've been practicing sustainable growing, well, longer than anybody even knew what sustainable was. In fact, I like to define sustainability as generational farming rather than calling it sustainable farming. It's generational farming. And the reason why I say that is because if you think generationally, you really can't help but be sustainable. And to me, it's as simple as that. So we're doing our level best to improve our footprint in our vineyards in the land that we have the privilege of farming. But you know what, Aaron and that next generation, they're going to take this sustainable process much, much further because they're a lot smarter and they're getting a lot of experience there. Oh no, you can't cut back in, Aaron. No,
Yeah,
you can't do that.
exactly.
Sorry. Well, I'm not sure when you guys want to leave time for questions and such, but I think you're about to announce the Nero de Avo. Is that right, Randy?
I think we're actually getting ready to announce our special visitor, our quail visitor.
Ah, okay, that's fun.
Yes.
All right, well, I'll just keep the video then on a cool owl box here that I found.
Excellent.
And some,
Excellent.
you can say,
Let me see here. I see. There you are, ladies. Eileen. So I am going to pass us.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Eileen Jones. I'm the Education Director at WildCare.
And I'm Ryan, and I'm the Ambassador Program Manager here at WildCare.
And we are so excited to share Callie's California Quail with you. And I just love the work that you're doing at your vineyard. And it's sort of like, if you build it, they will come. If you create the habitat, you'll have all of those animals return, which I'm so happy to hear that that's what's happening at your vineyard. So we're going to switch it so you guys can see Callie. And I'll tell you all about Callie. Great. All right, so Callie is one of 18 ambassador animals here at WildCare. And these are all animals, wild animals. Many of them were patients with us that can't be released back into the wild. And they're ambassadors for their species to teach us about how to live well with wildlife. So things you should do, like you guys are doing to create habitat, and things you shouldn't do that harm wildlife. And so Callie is named that because it's the Calipepla californica is their genus species name. So we shortened it to Callie for his name. And he's been with us for about a year, and we think he's about 3.5 years old now. He is just a very active little bird. I'm hoping you get to see all of his calling and eating seed and all the wonderful things that he does. California quail are, of course, a prey species, and they're quite productive. The females can lay as many as 28 eggs, and other females often will come in what's called egg dumping into their egg or their nest. That's just a scratch in the ground, and they can have a lot of babies at once. And they're precocial, so when they're born, they have all that white fluffy down, and the eyes are open, and they can leave the nest right away and follow the adults around. And they can have large clutches. So in the fall, they get into what's called a covey. And these groups typically range from about 25 to 40 birds, but coveys of over 1,000 birds have been observed, which is kind of amazing. And they eat insects and fruits and seeds and berries, and lots of leaves of native plants. And let's see, they have that really beautiful top notch, and a lot of people think that's just one feather, but it's actually 7 feathers together. And he can express quite a lot with that. They actually have control over all the feathers on their body. And they do sometimes this rousting behavior, and hopefully he'll do that where he does this kind of fluffs up and realigns his feather. I think it's also a way of kind of relaxing and getting energy out. So let me tell you about why Callie came to be with us. He was stolen from the nest as an egg, and someone hatched him out and kept him for about 2 years as a pet. And then he got sick, and the owner brought him to Santa Rosa Bird Rescue, and they confiscated Callie. That's how he came to be with us. And so he has his own wonderful little enclosure outside. They are, of course, our state bird. And so it's really wonderful if you can create habitat for them. And they live in a lot of different places: coastal sagebrush and chaparral and foothills and high deserts of California. And they are really frequent backyard visitors. So lots of people get to enjoy our California quail. And they range all the way on the West Coast from Baja California up to Washington and into the southern part of Vancouver. So they have quite a large range. And as I mentioned, they're prey species, so they're really important in the food chain. Lots of other animals will eat them. In the wild, they live about a year because they get eaten so readily. And in captivity, they can live to be 2 to 5 years. So we hope to have Callie with us for a couple more years at least. Let's see. One of their calls that you've probably heard is the Chicago call. It goes, Chicago, Chicago. Let's see if I can get him to make some noise. Whoop. He's just going to do a little call back. They also have a pip pip call. That's an alarm call, and it means there's danger nearby. And so you often will see the males up on the tops of bushes. And that Chicago call they use to let the whole covey, the group of quail, know that they're about to move on to another place. And when they sense that a quail has kind of lost track of the covey and has wandered away. So it's a way of gathering folks up and the quail up and then moving them on to a new location. So he's making little calls there. So the males get up on top of the bushes, and that's often where you see them the most. And they're the watchdog. They're watching out for the whole covey. They can run pretty fast, up to about 12 miles per hour. And in short bursts, they can get up to 58 miles per hour. They're not great flyers. And I don't know about you, but I've been hiking before, and I had a whole covey of quail flush out of a bush and just about give me a heart attack. They're not quiet flyers, but I'm always happy to see them. Let's see, what else?
Eileen, do you want to tell us about the setup that he's in right now?
Yeah, so he's in just this little cloth mesh, I guess you could call it a cage, that we're going to use to bring to classroom, so we can bring Callie into the classroom for kids to see.
That makes sense.
It's got a 360 view all the way around, so we can have a group of kids around and watch Callie.
We have another question from Jacqueline. She says, I'm wondering why Callie doesn't have a mate. Solitary confinement, even if it's comfortable, is very unnatural. And yes, that's a very good point.
That is a really great question. And because he was hatched from an egg and raised, he was really imprinted on a human, and he doesn't know he's a quail. He likes being around people. And in fact, he was in the bird room for a while. And whenever they put other birds with him, he just attacked them. So he doesn't want to be with other birds. which is too bad because they really are group animals. So great question.
And that's really one of the big advocacy messages that WildCare always promotes is don't make wild animals pets. There are so many incredible domestic animals that need homes. Animals like Callie should have been hatched as a quail and grown up with quail the way he naturally should have. And the fact that someone took him out of the environment and made him a pet is the reason that he's not releasable, and always a very cautionary tale.
Yeah. Something else I find really fascinating about quail, back to sort of their egg laying, is that they have synchronous hatching. And so they'll lay a bunch of eggs. Again, other females might come in and dump eggs in their nest, but they don't start to incubate them. So they're just sort of in suspended animation, if you will, until they start to incubate the eggs, so that they'll all hatch out within a couple of hours. Now, the eggs are only laid over a number of days, not too many days. But they all hatch at the same time, so they all have a chance then, because they're so precocial and on the move right away. They need to be able to leave the nest and hang out with the adults right away, rather than staying in the nest on the ground and be vulnerable. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Well, I wish we could get a Chicago out of him, but
No.
it's funny. I know his enclosure there is kind of new for him. So I think he's very much doing the, I'm sorry, where am I and what am I doing? You want to talk just a little bit about our wildlife ambassadors and the education programs that you do with them, Eileen?
Yeah, so our wildlife ambassadors are here for a variety of reasons. Obviously, Callie's here because he was what we call kidnapped from the nest. And we have a couple of animals like that. But others got tangled up in fishing line or fishing hooks, or had other negative interactions with humans. And so they have various reasons about why they can't be released. And they have great stories we tell their stories to the public and can really teach a lot of lessons about things people should and shouldn't do. And really, as Allison was saying, one of the very biggest messages that we have is not to take animals from the wild. So these animals go out on programs with us. They're going to be going out on their hikes with us, actually meet us at the very end of our nature hikes with kids this summer. But they also go out into the classroom. We bring 3 ambassadors at a time, and the kids get to meet these animals up close and learn about their species and why they're so special and important to us and our ecosystems. These guys really, all their scratching that they do, they really do important work for the soil and moving seed around. They have a really important role in our ecosystem. So that's a little bit about our ambassador programs. We do a lot of other education programs, but that's really the ones that involve our lovely animal ambassadors.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. It's so fun to see Dale. You know, he's we're all here on property, and he is out there just calling his pool head off nonstop. That Chicago call and the pip pip call and all of the things. He is a busy little bird. And let me reassure you that he gets a lot of attention. One of the things that I love most about our ambassador program is the incredible amount of care and attention each of the animals gets from our volunteers and from our wonderful team, Ryan and Eileen. And so Dale is always getting a lot of, even though he's not with another quail, he's getting a lot of reinforcement and a lot of encouragement and just a lot of attention. So if no one else has any other questions, I think we will let Eileen and Ryan and Callie go. And I am very excited to jump into our next wine. So Randy or Aaron, I'm not sure who's up, we'll toss it back to you.
Well, let me introduce the next wine, but one thing I wanted to say about quail is that we get in our natural habitat areas, we get the opportunity to meet quail when they're just hatched. And the best way of describing little baby quail, and they hatch and they move, it's like watching little cotton balls run all over the place. So it's a lot of fun, and we get them up on our lawn, our yard. So it's really a rewarding experience for sure. So
when we get them in the wildlife hospital, we always talk about them as being popcorn. So
yeah,
they just hop around everywhere. Yep, exactly. Sorry.
That's a good descriptor too, because I totally get it. So with that, we're gonna move over to the red tail, the red tail Nero d'Avola, which is an Italian varietal. In fact, it is a very popular varietal on the island of Sicily. But Nero d'Avola is a wine that is a red table wine. It is, I think if you taste it, you're probably going to come up with a little spiciness and some raspberry flavoring to it. But to me, a lot of dark fruit involved here. This wine is aged for 12 months or so in French and American oak. We actually, on this wine, and a lot of our wines are done this way, but on this wine in particular, we've pretty much kept hands off on the wine. It was brought in, it ferments on its own. We just let nature take its course with this wine. It's a new one for us. It's only, the vineyard is only 3 to 4 acres in size, so it's very, very small. And a young vineyard on top of that. So we're learning a little bit about Nero d'Avola. Give it a taste, see what you think. And I think while you're tasting the Nero d'Avola, by the way, it's called Redtail. It's a single vineyard. Redtail is the name of the vineyard. The reason why it's called Redtail is because it's next door to one of our habitat areas, and we have a number. I don't know, maybe 3, 4 redtail hawks that reside in that area, and so it's a very natural thing to call that vineyard Redtail, because we have redtail hawks flying over it all the time. So with that, enjoy tasting that wine, please. I think Aaron is supposed to come back to us. Let's see if we've got him and get a little better reception. I don't know about you folks, but I had a hard time understanding him. But I hope he was coming across a little bit better now. Aaron, you're on.
Well, Dad, you've had a hard time understanding me for years and years. So
that's very true. That is true.
Yeah.
We're drinking and you're working.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have moved location again. So if all of you guys can see me all right, we are actually at the Redtail Vineyard, the Nero d'Avola, which is right down the road from LangeTwins Winery. If I just flip the camera, I raise it up a little bit, you can see the winery there in the background of one of our buildings. And then right in the foreground here, we have the beautiful Nero d'Avola. And so the Nero, as Randy said, is popular on the island of Sicily. And from a latitude perspective, we're pretty close to central Italy and southern Italy. And so this variety is a natural winter for us here in our Mediterranean climate. So Nero it's really interesting. They have oval-shaped berries, really long clusters, as you can see here. And some of these leaves, I swear, they're the size of dinner plates. I mean, they can get really, really large. And so it's a very unique varietal for us to be growing, not very common in California. And that's what we are trying to specialize in here, are some of these more obscure Italian varietals that we feel do a better job in our environment versus some of the Spanish varietals. We think that they have softer tannin structures that provide a little bit more length and less of that bitterness that some of the Italians have. And so we really like that earthy, or those earthy tones that Nero d'Avola provides. But behind me, if you guys can still see me all right, I don't know if you saw me walking through that, what looked like a little riparian forest. That's exactly what it was. That's Jehant Slough. I'm gonna get into some shade here and show you Jehant Slough from a different angle. And so we are right next to, and we're really blessed to be next to this waterway. Well, it's really just a slough. It doesn't run during the summer, only runs during the winter. But we're really focused on trying to reclaim this habitat area. Now, let me show you what it's looking like right now. And this is really my next project. I'm not sure Randy and Sharon know about it yet, but this is what it looks like. And I don't like the way it looks. You can see here in front, I'm not sure if you can see these fence posts. See those fence posts there? This is the old cattle fence from the previous owner of this property. And everything there that's brown in the foreground that you can see is all, and this green here is mare's tail, and we have thistle and other non-native invasive species. This section of the slough, which is the upper part of the slough, not in the waterway whatsoever, but this is where we're going to take our next habitat restoration project and work with our local resource conservation district to remove these invasive species and to replant this and rehabilitate this with big salt brush, which is wonderful for the quail. They love that. Elderberry and some willow, perhaps, if it's wet enough in certain areas, and native oak trees and buckeyes. You can see the buckeye in the background there, this whole brown bush there. It's a tree, but buckeye is very interesting because it flowers in May and June, and then the leaves dry up and go dormant. And so it's one of those weird trees that goes dormant in the summertime and then comes back in the spring. So it looks like it's dead, but the buckeyes are actually doing very well. What's really interesting about this area, it's so gorgeous, is that we have some vines. You can see some of these oaks are so old, and these are kind of a hybrid of a blue oak and a valley oak. So they have that blue oak color, but some of the valley oak size, and we get some hybridization of trees here. But Jehan Slough is just gorgeous, and we were very lucky that we didn't have that. The farmer before us, or the rancher before us, didn't let his cows all the way down into the bottom of the slough because there was no water down there during the summer. So they had no reason to. So we're thankful that he put up this fence, because that really maintained the health of the smaller shrubs and bushes and grasses down in the bottom of this slough, which we maintained our beautiful groves of California rose and whiteberry or snowberry and other shrubs, which are such great habitat for bird species. And we can't forget about the invertebrates, because the insect species down here, they're a critical part of the food chain. And we really appreciate all the beneficial insects that help us control the insects that damage our crop in the vineyard. So we like to promote that biodiversity, which ultimately helps us control pests in the vineyard, which are negative to the winemaking process.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so I'm just going to kind of continue to walk down here, but this is my next project, and you guys can keep up on that. And what's really interesting is that this corridor here that you see behind me will run to the south, and it will actually connect to our our project that we started in the early 90s, which was our Gill Creek project. And so if we can connect to that one, then we have another one that connects all the way to McCollum. And so we'll have it's like a 4 mile, we're about 2.5 miles away from where I last checked in. And so we're going to have these corridors which go through our vineyards, but connect all the way back to the McCollum River, which is the main wildlife corridor through our community in northern San Joaquin County. So we're really proud of the fact that we're able to kind of recover these lands, keep them productive from an agricultural point of view, because that's what enables us to keep doing some of these habitat projects, leverage those profits into and putting them back into the native riparian areas to enhance them and to repair them. And that's been our focus. What's the only interesting point here is that you can see what's happening with the drought, and I'll show you an example of this. I'm not sure if you can see in the background, there's a couple of dead snags right on the skyline. Can you see that there? That are very, those are, the vultures love hanging out in that. And that's an old cottonwood. And there are a number of old cottonwoods that are about, 100 feet tall here in the slough, in Jehan Slough. But what's interesting about that is they're all dying. And why is that? The only ones that are surviving here are the oak trees, the other drought-resistant species. So that really is an indicator of how the hydraulics of the watershed have changed, and that we are actually getting less water during the summertime, less soil moisture, which is why some of these cottonwoods are not surviving any longer, because they need a lot of water to survive. These oak trees are well adapted to drought, but we really do need to be very careful and use our irrigation water very responsibly, and in not only from an agricultural point of view, but from a municipal point of view, that we use those precious water resources very carefully, so we can keep these wonderful habitat areas alive and flourishing. In fact, I'm irrigating this blue barrel here. Is just an empty barrel that I'm using to irrigate a few of those small trees that my son planted from acorns, and we transplanted here. So we have our water bucket and our little blue acorn, and I send him down here every 2 days to irrigate these little trees, which are looking great, but taking some time. Mother Nature takes her time.
Indeed. Hey, Aaron, quick question for you. One of our viewers is wondering, how many acres is the estate?
So the farm, as you see it here, LangeTwins Winery, is about 1,200 acres of ground that we own, including sloughs and river edges and things like that. We're also a vineyard management company, and so we manage other people's property as well. So there are folks who may own a vineyard that we take care of, much like a gardener would come and take care of your front yard. So we handle everything. It's more complicated than a mow and blow job, but it's handling it from cradle to grave. We plant the vineyards, take care of it, help them select varietals that match that area, help them find a buyer, and handle everything from training to canopy management all the way to harvesting and delivery to the winery.
Very cool. I just want to jump in very briefly. The idea of wildlife corridors is so incredibly important. And it's one of the advocacy issues that WildCare does work on as well. Certainly in an urban environment that gets, it's even more challenging in an urban environment. But the idea of not just providing space for animals, but also providing ways for those animals to move to other places and interact with each other. And what an amazing system of corridors you have set up to get them, to get all of these different species able to be into contact with each other. And that gives genetic diversity and it gives them options if something happens to the place where they're living. Just really, really great. So keeping in mind the importance of corridors. So when you hear those words and you hear about projects that are supporting wildlife corridors, then big thumbs up from WildCare and from all of us.
Well, what we're trying to convince folks in our area, and we're not the only ones in Lodi doing these types of projects. I like to think we have a little natural advantage because the properties that we have there are adjacent to some of these amazing wildlife and natural waterways. But what we're trying to convince folks is that even if you're in the middle of town, and you have a landlocked 40-acre parcel that doesn't have beautiful oaks and a slough or a river nearby, you can still absolutely leave a 15-foot hedgerow or wildlife corridor there and encourage your neighbor to do the same. And if we can do that, if we all can just give 10 or 15 feet, and I understand that everyone has to make a profit and they have the right to the highest and best use of their land, but if we can give just 10 or 15 feet, imagine how much more beautiful, and I love the look of a vineyard as much as the next guy, but imagine how much more beautiful our roadways would be. Imagine how many more bird species we would have that are actually beneficial bird species that are native to this region. And imagine what that's going to do for the beneficial insects and biodiversity in our region. So I think that it can just speak volumes if we're able to give just a little bit back, plant those oak trees and plant those western redbuds and everything else that work as such an integral part of the greater ecosystem in which we participate.
Here, I totally agree with that. And this doesn't happen accidentally, because the reality is when Brad and I started farming in the early 70s, we started to take a look at the way my dad and what we were taught how to farm in school. And we started saying, there's got to be a better way. And we really kind of look back to the future. We look back the way my grandfather farmed, and then started to implement some of the things that they did at that time. And so it takes time. As Aaron said, he showed you those little tiny plants that are just planted this year. Well, 5 years from now, they're going to be big. And 10 years from now, they're going to be a real item out there, providing that habitat cover that we're really anxious to look for. It takes time. We're working with Mother Nature, and Mother Nature always hands us a different deck of cards that we have to deal with on a year-by-year basis. And so consequently, we have to be patient. And when we're patient, I planted oak trees that are now 50 feet tall and takes 2 people to put your arms around it. And I planted those 50 years ago. And so the reality is, what Aaron is doing now with what they're doing in restoring Jehan Slough and increasing the native species there, from fauna to vertebrate, they're doing it not for them. They're doing it for their children and for their grandchildren, because that's how long it takes to convert and change. And so it's important to those of us who live in this on a day-by-day basis, and it's important for you to understand and to come out and visit, because you can see these things in the vineyards going on all the time. So with
Quick
that
question for you, Randy. Are you guys open now? Are you open for visitors and tasting?
yes, we are.
By appointment.
Fabulous.
Appointment, we'd love to see you.
Absolutely.
Perfect. We'll make sure everyone has the link for that. I'm sorry, I think you were going into our next wine. I'm very excited.
Absolutely. I think we should go on that.
Petit Syrah.
It's Petit Syrah. Now look, we started off in Lodi in the AVA with the Elianico Rosé. Then we went to Clarksburg for the Chardonnay. Then we came back to Lodi for the Nero d'Avola. Now we're going back to Clarksburg because our Petit Syrah comes from a vineyard that is called Diablo, and that is it's another single vineyard wine, Diablo wine. Petit Syrah, I want you to remember that this wine, really taste it, you're going to come up with blueberry, raspberry, dark fruit. Again, it does get 12 to 14 months of oak aging. When you taste this wine, think about the food that you're going to have with the wine. And that's what I do all the time. I mean, I drink wine every night, and I think about the food that I'm going to have. And actually, I think about the wine first, and then I try to match the food to that. It really should be done the other way around. But that being said, this Petit Syrah really requires, or not requires, but really asks for bold food flavors. It's a big wine. It's going to need something rather bold to come up against it, and so that you can enjoy the wine with the food as well. So this wine is a wine that myself personally, I enjoy it with ribs, spare ribs, barbecue, anything smoky off the grill is going to go really, really well with this wine. Give it a taste and see what you think. Any questions? Don't be bashful.
Yummy.
What's that? I see that there's a vegetarian chili fan in the group, because we do have the chat open. And yeah, make sure it's got a little spiciness to it too, okay? Because that's going to really do well with this wine. Okay, so we should talk a little bit, while I have an opportunity, about where we are right now in the growing season. As I said at the beginning, or at some time, I said that we're dealing with Mother Nature. Well, Lodi, and much like California, and the entire state of California, we haven't had rain since February. And so we're in severe drought. It is a problem. It's going to continue to be a problem. We do irrigate, and our water comes out of the ground. So we have deep water wells that are really pumping up water. And I call them ancient water. So in some cases, the water's probably been there for several thousand years, maybe even 50,000, maybe even 500,000 years. I don't know. But it's ancient water that we're pumping out during drought. Now, when we have the Sierras are full of snow and we get a lot of rain, now we regenerate our aquifers, and then we're not tapping into the ancient water. We're tapping into water that hit the ground last winter. But we didn't have a winter, and we're not getting a regeneration. So we are tapping what I would call ancient water. And it really puts a perspective on what we're doing with our water, because it's really kind of humbling when you think about tapping into something that's been underground for 500,000 years. And so that's where we are right now. We're having to irrigate. Obviously, grapes are a permanent crop and they require water. But I'll tell you what, we spend a lot of time walking the vineyards, looking at what the water needs of the vineyards. We do a lot of testing of the different aquifer levels, or the different soil levels down to 5 to 6 feet, seeing how the vine is harvesting the water that is there and how much we should add. And we really do it by prescription. It's not just throw a bunch of water on a vine, because what we've learned over the years is that controlling water, when water goes on the vine, or how much water is added to the soil for the vine, really has a profound effect on the quality. And so we're very, very careful and judicious in the amount of water we use for two reasons. It's a valuable resource, but it also, too much of a good thing like that is not good for wine quality. And so we do everything by drip irrigation, and we've been on drip irrigation, I don't know, 30 years. So and as Aaron has said several times before, we're not the only ones. I mean, drip irrigation is certainly the dominant way that the growers of California are irrigating their vineyards, and we do conserve water by doing that.
Quick question before we go back to Aaron. I'm just wondering, how much are you concerned about the heat waves that we've had, we're continuing to have?
Well, the heat wave, yes, we watch the weather, we watch the forecast, we irrigate to combat the heat wave. As long as we're judging well, sometimes it's a bit of a guess. How hot is it going to be? How long is it going to last? How much water should we be adding to combat the results of that heat wave? You know, I mean, it is something that we've learned to handle. And Brad and I have been in the business for a really long time, and we've seen this before many times. So it's not unusual, but the drought side, it makes it a lot more difficult. I'm not concerned. We spend a lot of time in the vineyards. That is the best thing that we can do for our vineyards, is watch them, look at them, see what's going on in the vineyards, and respond at the correct time, instead of going off to the coast and fishing for salmon out on the coast and coming back and saying, oh my God, look what happened to my vineyard. Now what do I do? We don't go on vacation during the growing season. It's important to mention that, you know, harvest is our payday. And basically, we get one payday a year, and that is in August, September, and October, when we work all year growing the crop to harvest that and bring it into the winery to make wines. And so during the growing season, it's a very, very serious time for us. And so we spend the time that it takes to get it there.
Okay.
Anybody else? Any questions?
Aaron, do you want to talk about Declan's wildlife cam for a little reference?
He might not have heard you.
You're on mute, Aaron.
God dang, I just had my 71-year-old mother tell her 41-year-old son how the hell to work a phone. That was
It's a techno thing, honey. You'll learn it someday.
Oh, God almighty. All right, well, that's okay. I've probably given her lip for 41 years on, so anyway, I shouldn't say anything more. I'll get myself in trouble.
You won't get lunch tomorrow either.
Well, one thing that we feel is really important here at LangeTwins, and one way that we really want to give back, is not just trying to do the right thing in the vineyard and in our natural corridors and the land that we are stewarding currently until the next generation, is trying to educate that next generation. And so many of our habitat projects are actually involved with the Center for Land-Based Learning out of Woodland, California. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's worth a look. CLBL, Center for Land-Based Learning, the SLUES program. And what it does is we establish or identify a habitat project like the one that I had looked at before, that I'm hoping to. There's my son behind me. Come on over, Deck, say hi. I don't know, bud, he's in the garage. Sorry about that. Hey, Declan, you want to come talk about your wildlife cams? And he's a little camera shy, but one of the ideas is to bring out a class of sophomores or juniors in high school and help them actually identify what species would do well here, why they would do well here, get their hands in the soil and actually install an irrigation system, plant some quail brush, plant some coyote bush and some red bud and some wild rose, and understand really what the idea of a watershed is and where they're what resources this natural environment gives us. And so it's about taking these kids who've been in mostly an urban environment and showing them that, yes, hey, food does not come from Safeway, because there are so many kids who feel they're ignorant through no fault of their own. But it's this idea that we teach, as I said before, we teach kids about relationships between us and other people. We teach them about government and the golden rule, but we never teach them about what's my relationship with the land. And that's what we're trying to do. And so during the we invite out usually about once every 2 years a class of about 25 to 30 kids, and we have a 3-day field trip on our ranch where we actually involve them in that habitat project and talk to them about farming, talk to them about our interaction with Mother Nature and these wild places, and why that is such a critical, why we have to maintain that critical balance as we go forward. But I'm as the little tiny step to teach my son this as we go, beyond just an appreciation for wildlife, is really trying to understand the wildlife that's in our McCallum River watershed. And so during the pandemic, when we were just dependent on Zoom school, which is just driving me crazy for an 8-year-old kid, because he didn't want to sit in front of a computer, I bought him a few those cheap game cameras and those motion sensor game cams that you can put out that usually hunters would use. Well, he went out there and put them in through the Jahant Slough and other areas, and we caught so many different beautiful native vertebrates, from bobcat to deer to raccoon and skunk and quail. And he learned what a black phoebe is, a flycatcher, which is just, most kids at 9 years old have no clue what a black phoebe is, or a northern mockingbird. And which each video that he captured, whether it was he would post to his YouTube channel. And so he created his own website. And I'm sure someone can post it in the channel if you want. We don't make any money on it. It's from an 8-year-old's, a 9-year-old, he just turned 9, a 9-year-old's point of view. And so he, with each animal that he captures, he posts the video on his website. He writes 5 bullet points himself and types it in himself on, the coolest things about this animal, and then post it online for others to see. So if you have little kids, or little kids who are interested in seeing kind of videos in the wild of real riparian animals, flora and fauna, check it out. It's declanswildlife.com. Like I said, we just do it for fun, and that's it. So check it out. It's kind of entertaining.
So incredibly cool. What a fun project for him, and what a great opportunity for him to actually really see the animals that are sharing that incredible property that you all have with him. I love that. And I think that one of the things that WildCare does best is that idea of creating projects and giving kids a way to actually learn about habitat, learn about environment, learn about wildlife on their own through their own projects. And we have our programs, from our summer camps to our school programs, really do encourage that sense of exploration and that sense of come up with a creative way that you can learn about the wildlife in your area. And whether that's a photography project, and we've had several of those, or if it's a project of getting out and doing cleanups, or doing habitat restoration in your neighborhood, or just so many other different ways that you can get kids involved. And we just agree so much that educating the next generation is absolutely the most important thing that we can do. And you watch kids that understand wildlife and know species. I love that he learned his black phoebe and his northern mockingbird. And we'll have kids come into WildCare's courtyard, and they know the species of all of the educational animals that we have, and they're able to really talk in a way about them that their parents certainly can't. And it's just this sense that if we can get young people to care about animals, care about wildlife, care about habitat, that we will have done our work here. And so we're just, whether it's the nature van coming to your classroom, whether it's a live animal program coming to your classroom, whether it's a summer camp, or this year we're doing nature hikes during the week, and then also have virtual wildlife classes. We weren't sure how to sort of put that together with COVID, but what any of those programs, that the idea of using the 5 senses to explore your world, and then really sort of working that forward, and sharing that with your family, and sharing that with your friends, and making yourselves the next generation to take care of this planet is the work that we're so proud that we can do as well. So looking forward to looking at Declan's cameras. That's going to be fantastic.
Oh, and we also need to remember that consumers have a lot of power. And, we have competition, right? That we have to be able to sell our blueberries or tomatoes or wine or whatever it may be, and compete with other people around the world. And so, there are lots of different labels that are on, we have, on products that tell you where they're grown and who they're grown by. And so knowing where your food comes is I know it's an extra step to learn where your food comes from, but it's really critically important, because you have a choice of supporting farmers who are really cognizant of their impacts on the natural world, and trying to achieve that balance that we've been talking about here. And there are other farmers who may not be. And there are other countries around the world, and not to speak poorly of anyone, but there are different regulations in place. You know, California is one of the most regulated places in the world, and for good reason, because we have a lot of beautiful resources that need to be sustained and conserved. But that being said, you know, you have choices. When you buy that pack of blueberries, you know, look for a California farmer. When you buy that bottle of wine, look for a California grown farmer. Look for someone with the Lodi rules for certified wine growing. We certify all of our wines and go through a rigorous certification program, which is a whole chapter on ecosystem management. And that means that we have to pay attention, and we are audited to make sure that we are farming in such a way that protects the natural habitats and waterways of our flora and fauna. And so, you know, when you have the opportunity and you have the time, and I know no one's got extra time, but you try to make those educated, informed food choices and purchasing decisions, and you'll help support these efforts.
Absolutely. Oh, go ahead.
I could not have said it better. And that's why I should retire, right? Right, Aaron?
If I can have a half of your salary.
You don't pay us. So we just want to remind everybody as we close, there is a trivia opportunity. So I'm sure you've learned a lot about our family, our farm, the winery. Fill out the trivia information, send it in, and we'll send out prizes. The other thing is in August, we're actually going to do a road trip weekend. You can reach out. I think Allison's got details on it. So we'd love to see everybody, you know, make the effort to come out to the winery. We will be in harvest by August, so it kind of gives you another layer of fun out in the winery. So thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate being part of the partnership, and take care of your quail. We've got lots of little ones at our place as well, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
I think yeah.
Thank you. Night, night. Night, Air.
Thank you guys so much. I think I speak for everybody when I say this has been absolutely entrancing. I have been fascinated. That was so interesting. The wines are amazing. That Nero d'Avola is my new favorite wine. So I am just thrilled about that. Just so good. And it has just been such an interesting and educational and fabulous hour and 20 minutes that we've spent with you. So thank you so much. And I wanted to let everybody know that we are at WildCare. We will be continuing our partnership with LangeTwins. I'm coming out, I swear. I may not make it for the road trip weekend, but I'm going to come and hang out. I want to come see the red tails. And that the LangeTwins Winery has a wonderful program called Support Those Who Care, which allows them to support partnerships and support organizations like WildCare. And we have a special promo code. The promo code is WildCare, so it shouldn't be hard to remember. So I'm going to be using that when I pop in and buy my couple of bottles of Nero d'Avola, and maybe start a subscription for that because I'm going to be drinking a lot of it. But if you use the promo code WildCare when you go to the LangeTwins website, and of course, we're going to send a follow-up email and have that available. Stephen, I think we haven't sent the trivia questions yet. We'll get those out to you immediately, and then you can send them back and claim your prize. But if you use the promo code WildCare when you purchase wines on the LangeTwins Winery website, then you'll know that you are supporting an amazing family, and you're also supporting WildCare and the work that we do. So we are so very, very grateful for this partnership. I have had such a lovely evening with you all. I just want to sit down and drink wine and talk about stuff with you for animals and habitat and everything. If anyone has any follow-up questions, my email, probably the easiest way would be to email me. My email is LangeTwins Winery, WildCare in the promo code. Yes, my email is Allison with one L, ALISON @ discoverwildcare.org. Again, Allison @ discoverwildcare.org. You're welcome to email me. We can get those questions to the winemakers, to the Lang family. Thank you so very, very much. This was so fun.
Okay.
Okay.
See you. Night,
Everybody
night.
have a good night.
Night.
Night, night.
Have a great evening, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your wine. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Come visit WildCare. We're going to be open on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 to 2. So if you live in the area, you can come and visit us. We'd love to have you join us. We can discuss our wine tasting and our trip to Lodi, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Great, and we're looking forward to seeing you.
Wonderful.
Night.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
See ya.
Thank you, Stephen. Yep, we'll make sure we get that trivia out to you as well. I'll send that tonight. And again, you'll take a picture of it and send it back to them.
Get a fun
Thank
little
you.
gift.
A fun little
Yes.
gift. Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.